Everybody, Mark Kelly, Mr. Saltwater Tank. A couple minutes before noon on Monday, the obligatory pre-roll on the tank that everyone asked for. I'll be back in a couple minutes. Check. Hey everybody, Mark Kelly and Mr. Saltwater Tank coming to you midday Monday. Feels like spring where I am. I hope it's warm where you all are because no one should have to suffer through winter. I'm here to answer your questions today. As always, I'll start with a timely topic, and then I'll roll into your questions. If you got a question, just post them down there in the comments and I'll work through them. Thanks everyone for being here. Wow, you guys on YouTube are really blowing it up here. Thanks everyone for the well wishes. Thanks for saying hi. Timely topic for today, trade shows. What do you do when you go to a saltwater tank trade show? Now I'm curious, how many of you have been to a saltwater tank trade show? Whether it be local frag swap or maybe a Reefapalooza show, Aquashella, MACNA, any of those. If you've been to them, let me know which one you went to and which one it was. I'm curious. A couple of big trade shows coming up quickly. This weekend in Dallas, Texas, Aquashella is happening. And then next weekend, first weekend in April, Reefapalooza Orlando is happening. So two big shows that are on opposite end of the trade show spectrum. So let's talk about what do I do when I go to a trade show and what can you do when you're going. First thing I always do when I'm going to a trade show is figure out why I'm there. Now, obviously you're there to enjoy coral and look at fish and that kind of thing. Duh, that's obvious. More of a question for me is, am I looking for coral? Am I looking to talk to a vendor? Because trade shows are great for both of those types of things. This is an opportunity for you to go talk to the vendor, ask them a question that you have, work with them one-on-one, or if you're there to look for coral, totally different mindset for me. What am I looking for, whether it be SPS, LPS, softies? Am I looking for something rare? Here's a big hint, something that you can do to help you get ahead of the game. If you know that your retailer is going, then you can follow them on Facebook and see what they have bringing. A lot of these retailers will say, hey, here's some fire that we're bringing this weekend at the trade show. They'll show you pictures of it so you can have an idea already what you might want. And you can also go to the trade show's website and see which vendors are coming. So if you don't have a favorite coral retailer, then you can just go look and say, hey, who's there? This vendor is. Let's go check them out on Facebook or on their website and see what they're bringing. This way you get an idea of what they might have. And of course, feel free to message them. Send them a message on Facebook or on their website. Heck, even do the old school thing of call them and say, hey, I'm coming to the show. What are you guys bringing that's hot? Or I'm looking for this. Do you have anything that I should keep an eye out for? Never going to hurt to have that relationship with a vendor. You tee them up ahead of time that you're looking for something. Maybe they weren't going to bring it, but now they're bringing it because you reached out to them, and then you can take it home with you. Great thing to do for trade shows. Go ahead and initiate conversations beforehand, before you even go, because you never know who might bring something just because you mentioned it. Now, if you want to get there early, you can have a look around. Another great secret for trade shows is volunteer with them. Now, volunteering doesn't necessarily have to mean you got to do the whole weekend at the trade show. Sometimes they just want you for a block of time, a couple hours, 2 to 4 hours. They might want you to do something simple like stand and check everyone's badge when they walk in the door. That's pretty simple. I think I'd volunteer for 2 to 4 hours and watch everyone's badge as they walk through the door in exchange for coming early. And if you really want to get a jump on the game, volunteer to set up. Be like, look, I can't do anything on the day of the show because you want to be there checking stuff out, but I'll come the night before and help you guys set up. Setup is always a hectic time, not only for vendors, but the people running the trade show. So you call them up, send them a message and say, look, I want to volunteer. I'll come in on a couple hours on a Friday night or Friday afternoon, whatever it is. And look, just straight up ask, be like, can I get in early? Can I talk to the vendors? Try to cut a deal with the people. Why not? You get in there on a Friday afternoon, especially a Friday evening, some of those vendors will already be set up and you can see what they have in their tanks. Or you can help them set up and say, hey, what's this in the bag? What's in this bag? What's in this bag? You get first dibs on what's going to be hot. Maybe some of them will even sell you something before you even walk in the door. It's a great way to get a sneak peek into some of those shows a little early on. Now, the 2 shows coming up, 2 different kind of shows on different ends of the reefing spectrum. The Aquashella show, which is happening this weekend in Dallas, Texas. This is more of a festival type of show. There's artists there selling reefing type of art. It's more of in a way like a party type of atmosphere in a way. There are coral vendors there, but don't think of it as a heavy coral show. There's also lots of other vendors that equipment manufacturers you may know of, for example, like my Planet Aquarium friends, they're going to be there as well. So you can go talk to vendors and get a little different feel on the trade show than the other end of the spectrum, which is the Reefapalooza Orlando, happening next weekend, first weekend in April in Orlando, Florida. Totally different feel. Lots of coral vendors there. If you're looking for coral, there's going to be plenty there. There'll be some vendors there as well. This is a national show, but a different feel than the Aquashella. And either one is not right or wrong. It's what you want, and some of you might even be what's local. 2 big municipalities between Dallas and Orlando. If you live too close to one of them, certainly go to the show. Look, if you want to see these shows continue, you can't make it this year, you're thinking, but maybe next year, get your buddies to go, because without attendance, the show doesn't go on. So, either one of those shows, I would look to get there in early, help volunteer for them, offer your time. You can get in Friday night, have a look around and see what's going to be hot. Check in with vendors beforehand, certainly check the list, see who's going. I'll do that a lot with trade shows, especially for me. A lot of times if I'm at a trade show, I'm there filming, so my time is very, very limited. Even if I'm only filming a day, by the time I go talk to some of my vendors, people I have relationships with, the show's over an amount of time. So I'm looking at that list of who's coming, I want to talk to them, maybe I don't need to talk to them so much. There's one way to have a game plan, get you there early, potentially get you in early if you're willing to volunteer your time. Have a look around, because you're always going to want something for your tank, right? Then of course while you're there, have a good time. The reason you're going to the trade show is to enjoy it. Walk around, rub elbows with people, say hi to people you know. Maybe you can make some trades. Talk to people about issues you're having with your tank or things you want to know about. Talk to equipment manufacturers. It's a fantastic place to meet people, work with them face to face. These days with the internet, everyone tends to be more disconnected than usual, but you're there talking to someone, building a relationship, even meeting someone for the first time. They might recognize you at other trade shows, future trade shows, because you sat down and take a minute to talk to them. Certainly if you see me at a trade show, pull me aside, happy to take photos with you, answer your questions about your tank. Don't be shy. Some people said, well, I saw you, but I was kind of scared to talk to you. Like, what, am I threatening or something? Feel free, pull me aside. I want to hear about it. Again, photos, questions, whatever it is. Love to meet you at the trade show. I will not be at Aqua Shell this weekend. I'm holding down the fort here. My wife runs away to the other side of, well, the ocean, the big pond. She's going to the UK for 10 days. Doesn't make sense to me, but to each their own. So I'm here. I will be at Reefapalooza Orlando next weekend, hanging out in the saltwateraquarium.com booth. So either one of those shows, you'll have a great time. If you go, if you have gone, let me know how you liked it. If you're going, let me know so I can keep an eye out for you. Certainly keep an eye out for me. I'll be pretty easy to pick out. You know what I look like. I don't necessarily know what you look like. With that, let's jump into the questions again. If you have a question, post them down below in the comments, and I'll roll through them. Thanks, everyone, for being here again with me on your Midday Monday. Let's see. Says, thanks for the well wish about the tank. Thanks I'm glad that you enjoy it. All right. Reef God. There's a fun username. How many gallons is this tank? This tank, 448 gallons to be exact. 8 feet long, 3 feet wide, 30 inches top to bottom. All right. Scott Wells says, I don't get to go to the trade shows because I live in the UK. Scott, surely there is a trade show of some sort in the UK. I mean, I know it rains all the time in Britain, and as you all say, the weather is generally rubbish. But there's got to be some kind of trade show you can go to in the UK. If not, there's lots of airplanes that fly this way over to the United States. Here's a hint. Bring the family to Dallas. Bring the family to Orlando. You can go to Disney World. They'd probably love it. And you get to walk around all the time and enjoy the reef show. If it doesn't happen in the UK, come this way, man. Go west, young man. Come over to the United States. We got plenty of them here. Easy to hop a plane and come this direction. All right. Matty Ice wants to know the difference between real dry rock, as I call it, versus live rock that's been dried out to be made dry rock. All right, Matty. Two ways to differentiate this. There's real dry rock, and then there's live rock that's been dried out. All right, so what do I mean? When you say real dry rock, what I'm meaning is a real reef rock. That's what I use in my tank. That's what I use in all my clients' tanks that I'm building now. This is man-made rock that was not hauled out of the ocean. Man made it, we cured it, and then we took it out and put it in a box and shipped it to either your local fish store or your online retailer. Now, it was not made from the ocean, which is the opposite end of the spectrum. A lot of live rock came out of the ocean. It was taken from the ocean. It was made by nature, taken out of the ocean, and then shipped out. Man-made stuff, again, it's made by man, so it didn't come out of the ocean. It may have been cured in some salt water, but it's not like other types of live rock or even some dry rock that are chucked out in the ocean. They're per se cured, and then they're hauled out. A lot of that type of dry rock that's cured in the ocean can develop pests like mantis shrimp that you don't want in your tank. Back in the day, the Tampa Bay rock was notorious for having mantis shrimps in it. So the real reef stuff is what I talk about when I say dry rock. And then some type of live rock is actually dried out. They look at it and they go, we don't think this would sell as live rock. And then they just pitch it in a pile and they let it dry out and then sell it to you as dry rock. This is basically just reject live rock. It has a very distinctive look at it. You can look at it and be like, that used to be a coral, or there's a bunch of coral skeletons on that rock. That's a giveaway that this is reject live rock that was dried out. And that reject live rock can have a lot of dead organics on it, stuff that's just sitting on the rock. You put it in your tank, then it starts to decay, can leach out phosphates and nitrates, and can slow down the cycle on your tank. So if you're going to be using the reject live rock, the dried out live rock in your tank, you want to cure that stuff up beforehand so you don't have to wait for the curing process when it's in your tank. Now by curing process, I don't necessarily mean the cycling process. I'm talking about all the phosphates and stuff that it can leach out. It can cause big hair algae problems in your tank. If you're using that reject live rock that has been dried out and then sold, I like to soak that stuff in RODI water for several weeks, if not a month or more. If you've got the guts to do it, acid wash it with a muriatic acid to help clean it up. That's going to help speed that cleaning up process before it goes in your tank. Two big differences there. I personally use the Real Reef Live Rock, or the Real Reef Rock, on all my tank. They have the branch, they have the regular rock, they have shelf rock of all different sizes. Been very happy with it. And of course, as you can see, it helps the tank do really well. Great question. All right, Clicks Clacks Reef, as in click and clack, the car show guys. All right, just starting out my calcium reactor. What should I look for? All right, well, first make sure the damn thing doesn't leak. It shouldn't leak. Then you want to, there's two things that people tend to worry about with calcium reactors, and I'm going to make it easier for you. Most people worry about counting bubbles a second and then counting drips per second. Yeah, forget that. Too much effort. There's an easier way to do it, which is how I run all my calcium reactors, which is I set my drip rate to several drips a second, and then I leave it. And then I vary how potent the calcium reactor is based on the CO2 level inside of the calcium reactor chamber. First, I start with a higher pH because the tank likely doesn't need a big hit of the effluent coming out of the calcium reactor. And then as I get it going, I have to lower that pH down to make that calcium reactor more potent. Bubbles the second, I set that around a little less than 1 and just leave it. So I set my drip rate, I set my bubble rate, and then I don't touch that stuff again. Then I just tweak the CO2 levels inside of the reactor, and I do that through my Apex. Click, type in a number, click, save, and I'm done. None of this counting bubbles and adjusting all that stuff. It'll drive you crazy. All right. Bob says, I only go listen to Mr. Saltwater Tank. Well, Bob, I guess you're going to be home for a while. No planned talks at the moment for trade shows, but certainly if I am talking at trade shows, I'll let you know. However, those of you in the Middle East, Fadi, I hope you're watching. I will be in Dubai on Friday, April 19th in the afternoon there at BPK Dubai. So you Middle East reefers, keep pounding you on this one. Guys and gals, come out. Would love to meet you. It's been 2 years since I've been in Dubai. Looking forward to going back. Would certainly love to talk to you all as well. All right, Stephen Rudenberg. Good evening from the Netherlands. Oh, it's been a while since I've been there. What's your opinion about small tanks and its inhabitants? All right, Stefan, so you say small tanks. I'm going to say you're talking, let's say, 20 gallons or less. What we over here in the United States would call a nano tank. What's my take on those? Two things. Number one, it's a great way to get into the hobby if you know what you're getting into. Now, those of you that have followed me, I'm over at saltwateraquarium.com right now making a lot of videos for them. I'm doing a whole budget build series on how to get into the saltwater tank hobby for under $400 in a smaller tank, and giving you the education so that you know what you're getting into. If it was your first saltwater tank, you can certainly be successful on a small scale. All of my clients started at a small scale. One of them even started at the 6-gallon scale and grew SPS like crazy. So just because you have a small tank, that doesn't mean you're not going to be successful. You just got to know what you're getting into. Certain fish like tangs, butterflies, angels, not appropriate for a small tank like that. But again, you're like, okay, look, I just want to get started. If I have success, you're going to get a bigger tank. That always happens, and that's not a bad thing. You only upgrade if you have a bigger tank, then you can work into those other fish. But clownfish, cardinalfish, those are certainly appropriate for a smaller size tank. On one level, a smaller size tank is easier to care for. Look, if your levels are off, you need to do a big water change. A big water change could be 10 gallons. 2 5-gallon jugs to do a 50% water change. That's not too bad. In a lot of those smaller tanks, I wouldn't necessarily even try to keep harder corals where you have to worry about parameters changing as much. Certainly keep an eye on your temperature and your salinity, but topping off a 20-gallon tank can be as easy as taking a glass like this one every day and putting RODI water in here or treated tap water and putting it into the tank, and that's your top off for the day. That's not so difficult. If you're keeping softies, they don't care about calcium levels and magnesium levels, so you don't have to test for those things. Who cares if those levels are all over the board? Those levels are likely going to be stable anyway because the inhabitants in that smaller tank aren't using it up. So it's all about context for me, Stefan. It's one of the reasons I did the series over at saltwateraquarium.com talking about the budget build, showing how to have success on a small scale, because few people get into their first tank anywhere close to this size. Start small, have success, and then you build up from there. Great question. Look forward to one day getting back to the Netherlands. Fantastic cheese over there. Loved when I went over there to film cows. It was a good time. I missed the Netherlands. All right. B.A. Moore says, I'm moving soon. Ooh, moving. There's two words, one word that goes along with two. Two words that go along with the word moving. Number one, pain in the ass. Moving's pain in the ass. Number 2, upgrade. Fantastic time to get a bigger tank. You're moving, you got to tear the tank down anyway, unless you're selling the tank with a house, which usually doesn't happen. But you're moving, you got to tear the tank down anyway. Why not upgrade? It's the perfect time to upgrade. Using that as an excuse. You're like, honey, I'm buying you your dream house. Now it's time for me to get the dream tank. True fact, I have clients that sold their spouse on the house that way. They say, you get the dream house, I get the dream tank. Deal was sold. I put in the 10-footer. All right, so the question is, looking to build either a 300 or 350 gallons tank from Planet Aquariums, looking at either a footprint of 84.5 by 30 by 27 or 96 by 30, same dimensions, only 1 foot longer. All right, BA, if you're doing 7 feet or 8 feet, 2 things come to mind. Number 1, the price difference between 7 feet and 8 feet is likely negligible. You're basically paying for maybe 1 more light and a foot more of glass, because the equipment you're going to use on a 7-foot tank is very likely going to be the same gear you're going to use on an 8-foot tank. So run the numbers, because I've seen this a lot with clients when I'm building them tanks. They're like, I'm looking at 400 or 500 gallons, and I run the numbers for them, and it's like maybe $1,000, a couple $1,000 difference between the two, and they're like, forget it. For as much as I'm spending, I'd rather spend another couple $1,000 and get the bigger tank. We'll say this, 7-foot tank is a nice size. 6-foot tanks I'm not as sold on, certainly 5 foot's not so much. 7 feet is good. If you can afford an extra foot of length, absolutely go for it. You're never going to complain when you have extra space. And here's a hint. After 6 months, you're going to look at the tank and go, you know, it's kind of small. It doesn't seem as big as it used to be. The first day, you're like, oh, it's huge. And then 6 months later, you're like, it's not so big as it once was. So if you can get a bigger tank, look, go for it, man. You're never going to complain about that. No one complains when they have extra capacity. It's when they don't have enough. All right. Go ahead, let's see here. Tracy wants to know, what should we be cautious about when going to trade shows? Pros versus cons. Great question, Tracy. When I'm going to a trade show, what am I cautious about? Well, number 1, don't lose your children, unless that's why you're taking them to the trade show, because you want to trade them for a tank. That's another factor. All right, what should we be cautious about? A couple things come to mind. 1, if I'm buying fish at a trade show, certainly you're going to quarantine it. I quarantine every animal that comes into my tank. I highly recommend you quarantine as well. Certainly those animals at those trade shows may be under a different condition than one that's shipped to you. So don't buy your fish and be like, I'm going to walk around for 5 hours and go put it in your car where either it can get really cold or really hot. Also give that fish time to acclimate into your tank. That's one reason I like the quarantine. They get used to your routine, they get used to your food, and it gives them a chance to settle down when they've just been moved from the trade show, from the store to the trade show, and then to your tank. You put them in a tank with all these new inhabitants. Those new inhabitants are likely chasing them around because they're like, hey, who's the new guy? You can stress out the fish. Quarantine is a great way to transition them into your tank. Now, coral-wise, my big concern about buying something from a trade show is pests. Like a lot of these reputable vendors like Worldwide Corals, Unique Corals, Tank It Easy guys, they're dipping their corals. You likely will not have a pest come in on those corals. I still recommend you dip it. But if you're getting a coral from a trade show, you don't know how many other corals might have been mixed in with it. Maybe that vendor traded with someone from a hobbyist and put something in the tank. So dip all your corals. Look at them real closely. If I have SPS, I'm going to be more concerned about acroeating flatworms, red bugs, if you can even see it. Now, here's another thing about trade shows. A lot of times you're buying frags, which can be safer in terms of avoiding pests than a big colony. Because in a big colony, there's lots of places for those pests to hide. If you got a 1-inch frag and you're like, I can see every inch of this coral, it's right there in front of your eyes. So another reason that buying corals at a trade show may be advantageous for you because you're likely not buying big colonies. Now look, LPS pieces, look, if you're going to go buy a big lobo, the thing is going to be at least this big. Like you're not going to get a frag of a lobo. Understand that. But there's likely the pests you're going to run into more going to be SPS pests, zoanthids, macy, zoanthid-eating nudibranchs. But again, Tracy, you're likely buying a small frag, couple polyps of that zoanthid. If there is a zoanthid-eating nudibranch, it should fall off on the dip. You can always brush it lightly, that zoanthid, with a soft brush while you're dipping it to help knock something off. And if there's a big enough zoanthid-eating nudibranch on there, you're going to see the thing. So pests are the big things that I'm going to be concerned about when it comes to trade shows on fish and on corals. Another reason to quarantine, certainly dip your corals, take a good eye at them. Great question, Tracy. Hope you're going to a show. Hope you're going to have a good time. James wants to know, tank behind me have UV? Nope, no UV sterilization on this tank. Haven't needed it. No reason for me to add it. I don't like to overcomplicate things, so none on this tank. Reggie wants to know, have I had good growth from Radeon Gen 3 Pro? Absolutely, Reggie. I've had great growth from Radeon Generation 1. I was testing out the Radeon before it came out, had fantastic growth with it. I've had Radeon Generation 2, Generation 3, Generation 4s on clients' tanks. They all grow corals very, very well. No concerns whatsoever about that. All right, let's see. Let's roll with one more question here. Let's see. Who is going to be the lucky winner? All right, 2 questions because I always get this one. Scott, do I feed my corals with anything like amino acids or anything else? So Scott, I'm not feeding my corals coral food. They're photosynthetic animals. The lights take care of their food. I do put amino acids in this tank. I use Julian Sprung's AcroPower. I've been happy with the results on that for this tank. So this tank does get dosed AcroPower on my Neptune Systems dose. But in terms of feeding the corals in the formal sense, don't do it. It's a fantastic way to trash your tank. No need for it unless you're running non-photosynthetic corals or you're trying to recover a damaged coral like LPS. Otherwise, don't do it. All right, let's see. Oh, Ryan, an RODI question from England. What TDS would you consider time to change the DI resin? All right, Ryan, so when my RODI unit starts kicking out water that's above 0 TDS, I know it's time for me to change my DI resin. Now, the catch to this is I don't just change the DI resin. I'm going to be asking myself, when's the last time I changed the other filters before? Whether it be the sediment filter, the carbon filters, 2 carbon filters, even the RO membrane. If the DI bed is exhausted, that's easy first place to look. But then if it's been 6 months or more, I'm likely going to go ahead and just pull my other filters to be safe. It's a preventative maintenance type of thing. It's going to cost you a lot less to replace those filters than trying to drag out those filters until the end of their life, as if you would catch it exactly when their life is exhausted, then they're letting stuff through. So it's easier just to replace them. If it's been like a month or 2 since I replaced those other filters, my DI bed is exhausted, yeah, then I'll just replace the DI bed. But 6 months or more, certainly if it's been a year since I've changed my other filters, and then my DI bed goes, I'm going to take everything with it. Great question, Ryan. I enjoy it. Hope you are happy enjoying England. My wife has headed over to Scotland through London. I'm going to go to the beach. Whatever. Thank you all for being with me on Midday Monday question and answer session. I will catch you next week. Same time, same bat channel. With that, I'll let you roll on the tank for a little bit because everyone wants to enjoy the tank. I'll catch you next week.